What's up? This is Noah D. Friddies with Noah Fitness. We're doing another bodybuilding Q&A. And as always, I have my partner, Matt Berzicott. And for those of you guys who don't know Matt, Matt's been in the game for a while. He's been competing since 2004. He's also been my coach, my friend, my mentor for the past 7 years. He's also been coaching clients since 2009. I'm super excited to have him. He's also a coach over at Camp Jansen as well, and he's going to shed his knowledge on any of your guys' questions. I also have our special guest here with us tonight, and this is Nick Balaz, and he's been competing for 6 years now in men's physique, and he comes from an MMA background, but due to an injury, he really went into the depths of bodybuilding. That's where he started competing and learning under some of the top coaches. So super, super stoked to have you here, Nick. And he will also be helping us out answering your questions. But really the purpose of this YouTube here is to help you guys out. Because a lot of the times we all want to be bodybuilders, but we're missing certain information, and the problem is we don't know what that information is. So having a place where you guys can ask your questions and we can answer them directly is how I know we can give back and help you guys get to the next level. But with that, we have a few questions for you guys tonight. We're going to start rocking these out. But if you do have questions, go ahead and comment below. And if you love this, make sure to subscribe. Well, let's go ahead and kick this off with our first question. And we're taking these from Instagram today. So I'll do my best on pronouncing these. I do have dyslexia, so I'm going to butcher these harder than ever. But let's go ahead and start with this first question here. And this is by BK Pickers. And he's asking, if you had to pick one exercise per body part, what would that be? And I like to start with this question because it's kind of a nice warm up. We have our kind of fundamentals, or I'm actually pretty curious to see what you guys think that is. But do any of you guys want to take this one kind of and start things off here on what exercise per body part you recommend if you could only choose one?
Yeah. You want to go first, Nick?
Yeah, go for it.
Me? Oh, okay. So us personally, what we would pick, I'm gonna go. That's what I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna go with what I would personally pick myself. How about that? Chest. I would not train chest if I had that option. As you know why I hate chest almost every day, because every day is a chance to tear something new. But chest, I would pick incline, like a low incline dumbbell press or Smith machine press. Shoulders, are we using so even though there's 3 heads to the shoulders, are we just picking one exercise or what? What's the rule?
Pretty much wherever you want to take it, but give some detail behind why. Because I'm assuming this, just from the nature of this question, this isn't going to be somebody who's crazy, advanced. This is going to be midway to beginner kind of answering that. So this would be I don't know, answer kind of why you choose, say, the low incline instead of a high incline. I think that's a
well, I picked the low incline. I'm just picking the ones where we get the most bang for the buck. That's why I picked the low incline. So it's you can kind of hit all fibers of the chest on a low incline is why I picked that. And I think if I had to choose one, because, your chest does a couple things. The main thing is to adduct your arm across your body. So you need some kind of adduction there. And you're not able to do that with a barbell. So I'd probably choose a low incline dumbbell press. Let's say you can only pick one, even if there's 3 different. Shoulders. I'm torn between dumbbell laterals and a overhead dumbbell press. I'd probably still pick an overhead dumbbell press just because you can't go wrong picking a compound movement like that. Back, I would pick dumbbell rows, 2 arms at the same time, because I feel like that will hit, depending on what angle you're standing at and leaning over and where you're pulling to. I think you could hit all parts of your back with the set of dumbbells and doing a bent over row. What up? Quads, I would pick specifically, like the horizontal hammer strength leg press. Just that's just for me, myself. That's the one where you're like sitting down and pressing straight out.
Heavy as hell.
Feels real nice on my back, on my hips, on my knees. I can make it like all quad if, depending on what you want to work, you can change your foot position around. And if you want more glutes, then you can put your feet higher and whatnot. But I love that machine. Hamstrings, I'd pick just the lying leg curl. I feel like if you only had one exercise to do for hamstrings, you're going to get the most out of that one. Biceps, I would pick a pin loaded Cybex preacher curl machine. That one mostly because just the handles on it and the grip you can get. That's how I built my biceps before I tore them off. On that machine alone, I swear to God, I built like my arms the biggest they were 23, the biggest they ever
That's
were
insane.
with a pump. I built them like my biceps on that machine alone. Triceps, I would crushers with an easy curl bar off the floor.
Okay.
Why off the floor? Because I feel like it protects your elbows from tendonitis, because you don't have to really stop and reverse the weight with the tricep tendon. The floor, you can just lower it slowly, and then the floor takes away that impact, and you can kind of brace yourself and then go again.
That's a good
calves, standing calf raise. Yeah, standing calf raise, because that will hit most overall the gastroc and the soleus. Seated calf raise is just mostly soleus. It's hard to hit the medial head of your calf. Is that everything?
That pretty much covers it. And we don't have to do all of them, but that's pretty good. But I'm going to go ahead. I mean, you can break things down like abs, but yeah.
Nah, we don't care about those.
That's what I was going to say.
Hanging leg raise.
Hanging leg raise. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and summarize Matt's for anybody listening here. So chest, low incline dumbbell press. Shoulders, that's going to be dumbbell overhead press. Back, that's going to be 2-arm dumbbell row. Quads, horizontal leg press, if you have one of those. Hams is lying leg curl. Biceps is going to be specifically that Cybex preacher curl. That's the magic, I'm telling you. I've heard Matt preach about that damn preacher curl for years. That thing is, the proof's in the pudding. Triceps, skull crushers, calves, standing calf raises. So with that, let's go ahead and switch to Nick here. Nick, and you don't have to break it down as much, but whatever you feel, breaks the body down in your mind. If it's less, it's cool. If it's more, it's cool. But what would you say if you could choose one exercise per muscle?
I mean, I think those are all pretty darn good. I think personally for me, and this is all just based on, personal feel, squats, specifically hack squats for me, is the most bang for your buck. I mean, I do like, barbell squats as well. I just feel like I get so much more out of a good hack squat. Head angle makes a huge difference on hack squats. If there's a little bit of an angle to the back of your head, sometimes that affects my tie-ins in my neck, and I get all tensed up. I like when it's flat. A nice flat back on a hack squat is perfect. I'm not too much different as far as chest goes. Low incline. I prefer barbell in Smith machine stuff that I've been doing a lot of that recently. But that being said, I built my chest with dumbbells. So low incline either way. Dumbbell or barbell presses is my bread and butter. And shoulders, as far as shoulders go, I'm a disciple of Kevin Levrone, and I think behind the head Smith
Wow.
machine shoulder press is the way to go for hitting every head of your shoulder. And I've been doing that forever, and I'll do that until I can't anymore. I've done dumb things on military presses before where I've thought, I can do a lot more than I could and screwed myself up. But for some reason, and a lot of guys complain behind the neck stuff. But on a Smith machine, you're pretty safe. There's not too much that can go wrong. And I feel like I get the most bang for my buck out of behind the head Smith machine presses for shoulders. What else is there? Biceps, back. I 100% agree. I would say for me personally, single arm dumbbell rows opposed to dual, but I've done them both ways. I just find I get more activation and I have more control over one arm at a time. Noah and I have been going on a deadlift off for like the past 2 years. So I love lifting. I wish I could say that it was the best movement for my back, but as far as like building my back, yeah, for sure. Single arm dumbbell row. Biceps. I use that Cybex every day that I have.
You guys are learning something here.
There's not too much different. You know exactly what it does. Now, let's say I didn't have that machine available. Zyoplan curls, which is where I first started my arm training journey, was through the Zyoplan curl, which is a lot of people don't know about the Zyoplan curl. It's essentially a bicep curl with a twist, and you lower the rate, so you get a brachialis as well in there. I really like it. I started doing that. Not only is it a bicep movement, it's a full, you get your forearm in there as well. It's a great curl. And then for triceps, I like rope pull downs. I like the ability to spread out at the end. I find my elbows getting
that'd be my second choice.
Yeah, I just, my elbows are, the one part of my body that I've always had issues with are my elbows. I get tendonitis in my elbows constantly. I do hammers and I do skull crushers, but I just, sometimes it screws me up, but I've never had trouble with the rope pull down. So yeah. And then calves, standing. Although I won't get too far into it, but I'm in the process of patenting a piece of calf technology.
No way.
So
that's awesome.
I had a meeting this week with my patent attorney. So I can't say anything too crazy about it, but I do have some ideas about training calves.
Cool. I'm in for that. I could easily use some calf. So I'm going to say mystery. Cool. Love that. So for anybody listening, here's a recap. Quads is going to be hack squat. Chest is going to be, again, low incline, either barbell, Smith, or dumbbell. Shoulders behind the neck, Smith press. Back is single arm dumbbell row. Biceps, the ultimate secret, the Cybex preacher curl. And triceps is going to be rope push downs, and calves is the mystery that we're going to see unveiled that's going to take my calves to the next level. Cool. So I'll just give a few of mine. The key thing that you guys are going to know here is that everybody's really different. You can kind of pick and choose, but as Matt and I kind of said before, it's really going to just depend on you. But we're going to give our opinions here. So mine for chest is actually going to be the decline press or the dip. I'm a big believer that the chest fibers are more into a downward angle. So anything that's kind of pushing from that downward angle, I think you're hitting the most fibers. Shoulders, I'm a big fan of just like Matt, a 2-arm dumbbell overhead press. Back, I wouldn't highly recommend this one because it's a very difficult move to actually engage all of your back. But the traditional barbell row has been one of the keys to my back, and I just feel it really well. So that's why I would say that. Quads, well, that's a tough call. Oh, that's a tough call.
For everybody's,
you're going to say squats.
I was going to say squats.
You're going to say squats.
I don't think that necessarily is like killing your quads, The only reason I would say squats is because you're getting that gigantic overload. I just don't think you can get that overload as much on a leg press, but
if I were doing like a general recommendation for most of the population, my answers would be different.
Yeah.
I was just saying my personal ones.
Yeah, no, I would probably agree with you, Matt, is some form of leg press. If we're actually thinking just getting the most mind muscle connection, like a squat, something that took me 15 years to get down, and I'm still getting down. And I think it's great for my development, but if I were to focus on one, I could probably get better legs faster with focusing on quads. Biceps, I'm a big fan of overload. So I'm going to say the barbell curl. I think really just being strict there and going, straight progression, you can get pretty far there. But I wouldn't take my advice. I'd take Matt's advice. He said 23-inch arms. Like it's just you gotta take advice where people are experts. Triceps, skull crushers for sure. Love the overload. I'm a big fan of overload, as you can tell. And calves, I would agree with standing calf. Cool. Let's go to our next question here. I went pretty straightforward there. Go ahead and watch the replay to see my list. Let me grab my question list. Okay. So now we're going to go into more of a deeper, ethereal question here. This is Coach Hickson. He says, what would you recommend for training for those that have bad genetics specifically? So we're going to kind of go extreme here. Like, what would you recommend for somebody with bad genetics? And also for this might apply to everybody, but I'm not sure if there are kind of people on the opposite side of this. But the realization is that he's saying that when you realize you're never going to be like that ideal body in your mind, and we can argue that maybe you can, but his from what I'm interpreting is he's saying that like the thought process that you're never going to be at that like ultimate physique. You're kind of chasing the dragon. So let's just start with that first question here is, say you get somebody who just has like real bad genetics, and we can even, Matt, you might be able to help define this. Let's start with that, Matt. What is bad genetics for people out there who don't know?
Somebody that just has a harder time, either things don't come easy to them. They don't put on muscle as easy as their buddy does, even though they're training together, doing the same thing. They might see their buddy explode and they just, not much is happening. It can go that way. It could go maybe, you have a harder time getting leaner. There's definitely a genetic component to that too. I don't care what anybody says. Mm-hmm. It could go both ways. How do you train like that? I don't know that it's that much different, but you probably need to be extreme one way or the other. And what I mean by that is, if you're going to be like a volume person and you have bad genetics, you might have to be like super high volume. You're going to have to go to like one end of the spectrum or the other. You probably living down the middle probably won't work as well for you.
Okay, I'm curious on what you're saying here. So what are the two sides that you're kind of talking about? So we have volume, and then would the other side of the coin be just like pure like intensity training, like Dorian Yates style?
Yeah. And then they might be inclined to try a Dorian Yates style, but just more sets to failure than what, more than just one, maybe.
Gotcha.
They're going to have to kind of try everything and just see what works the best and just roll with that. As far as the second part of the question,
let's just start with that first part. Okay. Let's go to Nick, and then we'll go to the second part. So Nick, if somebody had just like real bad genetics, is there anything special that you would tell them how to train, etc.?
I guess it would come down more to, like Matt mentioned, dieting would be a huge one. If they're one of these people who are just, they can't get lean, or vice versa, they can't put on muscle. We're bodybuilders. We know how strict you have to be with your diet. For people like that, they have to be ultra strict. Mm-hmm. And that's just something you're going to have to come to terms with. If that's for you and you can handle that, great. And if not, then, you know, it's not meant to be. So yeah, I think getting your training locked down, like Matt said, if you're one of these guys who's not responding to, you know, heavy, high intensity training, you know, maybe switch to more volume. But one way or the other, you're going to have to pick a route to go down. So yeah, I would say, you know, whatever you do it. You know, if you're one of these people who think you have bad genetics, give it your all and try and, you know, be neurotic about everything. And if that still isn't working, then you gotta, you know, make up your mind.
Play chess.
Freaking lightning out here is crazy right now. Sorry.
Oh, really?
It's like lighting my building up.
One thing
about
about genetics. Yeah, one thing about genetics is I feel like a lot of people say they have bad genetics before they really know if they have bad genetics. Like they don't put enough time. Let's use Nick Walker as an example. If you would have told me 3 or 4 years ago that he'd look like he does now, and say that he's going to be winning pro shows, I'd tell you no way. I felt like he was maxed out a few years ago, but he knew he wasn't. He knew what he had been doing and, you know, how much room he had. And he talk about someone that's neurotic. The dude, I was texting him after the show late at night. It was like 1 a.m. I just waited to text him, but he was still up because he couldn't sleep because he felt like he, you know, had let people down and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I hope you at least got a meal in, because he doesn't even eat cheat meals. He doesn't care. He doesn't give a shit, you know? And he said he actually did. He said he did have a burger and fry. He had one after the show. That was it. And then he's back to work the next day, you know? So before people say they have bad genetics, I feel like they really need to put in some time. And when I say time, I mean like at least 5 years of solid training, nutrition, and everything else before you can say I have bad genetics, because I feel like it's a cop out most of the time.
That's an awesome point there. I think the point to kind of drive on that is really that people are kind of accepting bad genetics first. And something that we've kind of talked about before is there's certain things that you have to have covered before you declare anything on yourself. You know, last time we decided to put out there, if you want to be a bodybuilder, you should be like for plating everything. That's a blanket statement, but there's very few bodybuilders who are not lifting at that level. And strength is something that a lot of people can attain. You know, would you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
You know, over time. So, you know, getting to that level before you declare yourself, bad genetics, I think is necessary. And Matt, that's awesome. You said 5 years, because we live in a society that says, you know, if this doesn't work in 6 months, I'm clearly not genetically gifted. And the last point I want to kind of make before I bring it back to you guys is you have to follow what the do what the elite are doing, precisely how they're doing it before you even think about that. Like Matt's talking about Nick never skipping meals, never skipping workouts. They're absolutely hitting everything. So until you're even at that level, you don't even know if genetics is even coming into play. So you have to have every single base covered for 5 years, basically, to know. And that's the tough route. And that's often what we do. But I would say keep that vision in front of you on where you need to go. You know, get that strength level, get that consistency, hit the nutrition to that level, and then really judge yourself on that. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, and you can't say you have bad genetics before you start training too. A lot of people will look at their body type before they ever touch a weight and be like, I've got bad genetics. You don't know that. Like I was a scrawny little fucking twerp my whole life until I started lifting weights. But if I would have been like, well, I'm just a scrawny twerp, I've got bad genetics, I never would have found out. Like and a lot of bodybuilders, you need to put some muscle on, because you can't even see structurally if someone has what it takes or not until they have a certain level of muscularity. And once that level,
even so with bodybuilders with you know, people say bad genetics are what are essentially bad tie-ins. I know plenty of bodybuilders with terrible tie-ins who win pro shows.
Correct.
So, like, you can have bad genetics and you can still do really well. You just
there is nobody's structure is set up perfect. I mean, everybody has flaws. Phil Heath, they always say he's narrow and they talk about his clavicles, blah blah blah. That's really about the only thing, but that's pretty close to perfect. But I'm just saying, even close to perfect, there's still, Ronnie, you could say had a big, his waist or his gut, whatever. Ronnie also didn't have very good triceps. If you look at Ronnie, but you can pick anybody apart. So the point is, like Nick's saying, is there is top pros that are considered to have,
did you hear that,
bad genetics. No,
it's like you're gonna get storming.
If this goes out, I'm sorry.
No, you're all good.
The world is opening up. Yeah, there's like the most lightning I've ever seen.
We'll check on you. If you disappear, we'll check on you tomorrow.
Awesome. I think that's an awesome place to put it on the genetics perspective. The main thing that we want to hammer home is, don't leave any doubt that you didn't cover any ground. I think that's the big piece of the puzzle there. And there's been people time and time again that do have bad genetics, that get to the top, and also that think they do but explode, like Matt. I think maybe Flex Wheeler might have been an example. He was what was
hey Noah, Greg Kovacs, he's dead now, but do you remember him? Greg Kovacs?
Monster.
Talk about horrible structure.
Yeah,
that guy turned pro. So it's like,
in one of the hardest times to turn pro, by the way, not an easy
back when
pro
he was
card.
Stacked. Yeah, I don't know how he got it. I think he won the Canadian Nationals, but still, I mean, anyway, sorry, continue.
No, I agree with that. So basically, you can get to the top with bad genetics. I think that's the way to put it. Is
there's different definitions. There's different definition of bad genetics, I guess.
That's true.
Different definitions. Yeah.
Would you say overall that if you think that somebody who has, say, they think that genetics is the reason they can't make it far, they should definitely discount that thought?
Yeah. At least for 5 years.
There we go. Cool. Nick, any last comments on genetics?
Just train your ass off. That's 100%. All I can tell you.
Get your bases
train
covered.
Your ass off and you won't have to worry about it.
Cool. All right. So let's go to the second part of that question. How do you, I might be interpreting this incorrectly, but basically, how do people deal with, I'm going to say, called chasing the dragon of like, you're never going to be exactly at that body type that like you've envisioned. Is that kind of how you're interpreting it, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
He's basically saying, and we'll leave it. The way he worded it was like, you'll never be the person that you want to be, but you can always be the person you want to be. I think he's saying have the body that you want to have. And I think everybody faces that, unless you are a current or past Mr. Olympia. Then, of course I would like to be Mr. Olympia, but I know I'm not going to be Mr. Olympia ever. And how do you deal with it? I don't know. I don't really have good advice. Nick might have something better, because I don't.
Yeah. You kind of took the words out of my mouth. I think
we all deal with it.
99.999% of us are never going to be Mr. Olympia. It's just not in the cards. And even those with the best genetics probably won't. We're talking about a very small fraction of the population who will ever attain that title, in any division, in physique or whatever. So I think the sooner you realize that this is a day-by-day thing, you are always working towards an overall goal, and that, you might not ever be happy with it, but it's like an art project. You just keep working at it every day. It's like you're, building a sculpture or something. You just put it together every day. You chip in a little piece, So that's life. That's just
That's
life, you know. So
if you're somebody
either deal
that,
with it or you
if
don't.
if you're somebody that like gets your body to the point where you look at yourself and you're like, damn, I made it. I have, my body is exactly how I envisioned it and how I want it to look. You are in the minority.
Yeah.
Because
sure.
that day will never happen for me. I can tell you that. And that will never happen to probably 99% of people that compete in any whatever division they're in. It's kind of why we do it. It's the chase of perfection in our minds, and we're never going to get it.
Yeah. I would argue that's the only way that we get to the levels we can get to is like, for example, well, I don't know if it's the best example, but I would argue that even Ronnie Coleman as 8-time Mr. Olympia probably was never happy with his physique, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like he was probably like, shit, I never made it, but at least I was the best in the world. You know, that's probably what he thought.
I guarantee you he would. Yeah. If he could probably go year by year and tell you what he wished was different.
Chad would say differently, but sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I think it's kind of normal. I would say is you're just never going to be there.
I guess that would be our advice. Embrace that's perfectly normal to feel that way.
I think that's super good. One thing that I'll share a little bit of my perspective on this is I started to look at people, because a lot of us, when we get into this journey, a lot of us will be like, I want to look like Arnold. He's like the poster boy of getting into a lot of this stuff. But you got to realize Arnold didn't look like anybody else. So how on earth could anybody look like Arnold? I made that connection pretty early on, is that Arnold looked like Arnold. And even at a young age, at 19, he looked like Arnold. Like they really kind of looked the same. He's just a bigger version, you know, when he started getting into his later 20s. So you're only going to look like a better version of yourself to some degree. So what you are, you have to immediately start painting that picture of like, what's the best version of myself? Because you, like, Ronnie Coleman only looks like Ronnie Coleman. There's no other, like, maybe there's people that are somewhat similar, but like you're like, the next guy is not going to look identical. So that's what you kind of have to work with, is what you got. And I think that was helpful for me, thinking about like, well, I just have to maximize this. And as long as I'm doing my best there, that's the best I can ever do. Unless we come up with technology to like morph pieces of our body. But you can't necessarily, and I just want to maybe kind of bring this to you guys too, is like, I think some of us think that like we could like morph muscles like into actual like ridiculous other proportions. And do you think people have that same sort of misconception?
Yeah. People do think that. Yeah. People think that they could mold their body to look like someone else's. They don't understand that no two bodies on the earth are alike. And
try and do that with abs. That's what makes it works out for you.
Yeah. That's what makes bodybuilding cool, in my opinion. You know, there's everybody has a different look. Mm-hmm. Now it is different. Like the higher the level you go, or I should say the lower level you go of muscularity of the divisions, the more likely it is for people to look similar, like bikini, for example.
Good point.
You know, a lot of them look pretty similar, but the more muscle you put on, the more you start to see how different everybody is.
Totally. That's an awesome point. Nick, any last points to touch on never kind of looking like your envisioned goal?
It's never going to happen. Just be happy with what you got.
100%. Yeah. So, I think the good points are there is it's kind of the thing that pushes us to that next level. It's part of the gig that it is chasing that, and you're never going to be there. So accepting that, and also understanding that we are unique, that you can't just morph into somebody else. You're always just going to be, you know, a more enhanced version of yourself. So hopefully that helps. And hopefully we answered that question, you know, how you were asking it. Let's go into the next one here. This is getting a little more sciencey. So Nick, this might be right up your alley here. And of course, Matt. This is BK Pickers again. He says, what to do when insulin sensitivity decreases in the off season? And whoever wants to take that first, go ahead.
I'll let you go first if you want. I always go first because I can't shut up.
Well, people in the off season, I'm envisioning somebody being in a bulking phase and eating in surplus. Quick solution: lower your carbs. Like if you're eating crazy amounts of carbs and you're getting fatter and fatter and more watery, there's a problem. There's nothing. I think people think that they have to push themselves in this insane carbohydrate loaded, insanity in the off season. And trust me, I'm guilty of it. I've done it. You know what I mean? I've made every mistake the sun. But if you're putting on some amounts of body fat and I was right there with them, just eating way too much and putting on and then you have to cut all that. Once you've made the mistake of putting on too much fat and water in the off season and having to cut all that off for a show, chances are you're not going to make that mistake again. Mm-hmm. And I can attest. I mean, there's been times when I've been 230 pounds and it's not fun to come down to 200, mm-hmm. I don't like having to lose 30, 40 pounds, so, if your insulin sensitivity is decreasing and it depends on the rate too. Mm-hmm. If it just is kind of slowly decreasing as you're going along, it depends on how long of a time frame you're talking about. But if it's within a reasonably short to moderate time frame, you take a look at lowering carbs.
Totally. Yeah, low in carbs. I would definitely agree there. Yeah. Matt, what's your take here? You got somebody who's just clearly becoming insulin resistant. What are your steps for them?
Okay, so it depends why. It depends on the reason why, because there could be a couple reasons why. It could be excessive overeating. It also depends on what type of competitor it is and where they're at in the off season. So if there's no show near in sight, like if you're not starting a prep anytime soon, then yeah, I'd say a mini diet. The mini diet's going to be the best route to go.
And what's a mini diet?
If we're talking like upper advanced levels of bodybuilding though, which obviously is my bread and butter and my love. If we're talking, oftentimes it's just from growth hormone usage. Mm-hmm. And if
I literally wrote a note on my sheet about that, but I didn't think we'd be getting that advanced into this. I put a note on here, like circled GH. I didn't know if I should bring it up, but you're right on the money.
So, and also, I mean, this could work, this would work too if the reason was food. It would just depend on how far gone the person is. Like, how bad is their A1C? How bad is their fasted glucose levels? Like, how far gone are they? Because they can be insulin resistant, but still be in pretty good shape. Like if we're talking upper level bodybuilding, if that's the case, and maybe we have a prep coming up, then that's when insulin can be incorporated and can be used. And I say insulin, people might say, well, what about metformin or berberine or GDAs? I don't like GDAs or metformin because of the simple fact that they inhibit mTOR, this thing called mTOR. That's your switch for protein synthesis. So really far gone for me to use those. Like their blood sugars would have to be like wrecked. And then I would use them. The benefit of glucose disposal or metformin the benefits of that would have to outweigh, I guess, bodybuilding. I would say that would be when I would just need to correct someone's health when they're that far gone. So my answer is, it depends on how far gone, like how far overboard they are and how insulin sensitive they are, what type of competitor they are, where are they in their off season. Those are things I'm thinking about.
So what's a red flag for, like, say, a fasting blood glucose? Like what do you have any numbers in your mind? And no, we are not doctors by any means. We're not giving medical advice, but is there anything that you would be like, all right, that really is the point?
Like if you're consistently over like 110, 115, 120, that's pretty bad. I mean, you're not supposed to be over 100. I mean, you're not supposed to be over 100. So like it's pretty bad if you're over that. A1C is a better predictor because that takes the last 3 months of your fasted glucose and average of it. I think normal A1C is 5.7, I think. So anything over that, you might need some mini diet action.
Cool.
This man is speaking facts. And I brought this over for the next question, but it looks like we're rolling this all into one. Get one of these. It's $30 on Amazon. Do yourself a favor. Don't be guessing. If you think you need,
Nick, were you gonna say the same thing about metformin and GDAs?
Yes, I was.
I saw you nodding your head, but I feel like a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, a lot of, and not to mention gut health. Those things, metformin will destroy your insides. I don't think a lot of people know that either. They think they can just pop a pill. We come from a state, you know,
and that's why people like it. That's why doctors like it.
Take a pill. You know, it doesn't fix everything. Take a pill for. I remember I was friends with I don't know if you guys know Tony Huge from Enhanced Athlete.
Yeah.
I helped him patent a product many years back, and I got like a pallet of his berberine product. I mean, literally, I still have hundreds of bottles lying around here. And I took it for a while. This is back when I first started. And, you know, I was trying to reduce my, whatever. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, you know, and it made me go hypo. I don't need to reduce. I don't have high glucose. Like, I don't have high fasting blood sugars. I don't have insulin problems at all. I don't need that stuff, you know? So find out if you actually sugar is. It's the cheapest test you can do at home besides blood pressure. Just get it off Amazon. Like, save yourself the trouble.
Agreed.
That's a giant point right there. Is I think that can encompass a lot of things. Preventative action is great, but also you got to know when preventative action is actually not necessary, and actually getting your levels tested. I guess this is a little bit of a digression, but a lot of people use TUDCA. You call it TUDCA. I have dyslexia, so I pronounce everything wrong. So TUDCA. Oh, there we go. Amazing for decreasing, helping decrease like elevated liver enzymes. The dosages for TUDCA nowadays that I see people taking are astronomical. I used to test my blood every 4 weeks for years. And I would test when I started TUDCA. I would use such a microdose of it. It cleared, I had liver enzymes in the hundreds multiple times, and it would go down to double digits, under 20. You guys know liver enzymes with a micro dose of TUDCA. I see people taking 250 milligrams.
Like how much?
How much?
Like how much were you taking? Yeah.
Like literally 250 divided by 16. Like I would take a miniature spoon and just micro dose it because I bought a bulk powder, and it literally would tear my liver enzymes down to below 20 with a micro dose per day. And I see people taking 750 milligrams plus per day, 1,000 milligrams.
Oh, I see like people taking 1,500. Yeah.
That's insane.
It's like we're kind of not doing the testing necessary to see, where did those numbers come from? These are coaches who are saying like more is better, clearly, because if you're looking at studies, even I've never even seen those levels. And I mean, sure, money's not the biggest deal, but TUDCA is an expensive product. Or it's fake, because I bought the raw chemical and I was microdosing it, and it was unbelievable how well it corrected my liver enzymes. Now I'm just one person, but these are things that like you can start to really understand. I think, Nick, to your point there is if you're, and a lot of people don't consider these things. If you're taking berberine and you're starting to go hypo all the time and you just don't know why, it's or you're taking a GDA just because that's a glucose disposal agent, just because you saw it on a commercial, you could have a negative effect. So Nick, awesome point there. Any other comments on I almost lost track of that. See, that's how far I digressed. I lost track of whatever that question was. Oh yeah, how to combat insulin sensitivity. Any last comments on that question?
No, I think we summed it up. I think we covered all angles there. Yeah.
Perfect. Great. And Matt, your response was very, very awesome. Thank you for that there. And thank you, Nick. Awesome. Great stuff. Let's go on to the next question here. This is
I don't want everybody going and taking insulin though. That's not
you
don't
want to do that either.
Don't do that.
Well,
that's another thing. Insulin is a thing that you use only if you need it. It's not a necessity.
And
hopefully, I was going
to say, if you do things right, you won't need it.
Right.
Yeah.
Is we've just made the point of, you have to have a need. And sure, if you have a need, then clearly these are things that you're going to use, but definitely have a need before going into that. So our next question here, let's see here. Let's go ahead and end it on this question. I think it's a good question. This is by, I'm going to butcher this name, Macon Nee Hughes. And he's asking, how can I be the best coach possible? Since we are coaches here, basically, how would you help another coach out? I'm assuming this question is somebody who wants to help people. Maybe they have fitness experience or they've been transformed, kind of like us, and want to help other people do that. But what makes, I guess another way to ask this question is, what makes a coach a good coach? And we've all worked under some coaches too, some of the best in the world. So what would you say makes an awesome coach?
You obviously have to have a foundation of book smarts. So a foundation of physiology and anatomy, nutrition, all of the basics.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying you have to necessarily go to school for it, because I didn't. I'm all self-taught, and God, it's a really hard question to answer. Like, as far as when someone asks, well, how much knowledge do you need?
You say they just need a NASM certification, right?
No. Although I'm not mocking those. It's a good certification to have, but you need to have, I don't know. I want to say, like, you should at least work on yourself, trial and error, and be all in on this for 10 years before you coach someone else. I spent, let me think about this. Yeah, about 10 years, just trial and error and reading and, doing my own thing before I ever coached anybody else. But besides the obvious, besides having the knowledge, the baseline of knowledge, I think it's important to be able to communicate. And then you need to just give a shit, basically. If you care and you really just have all of your clients' best interests at heart, or anybody that you come into contact with, not just your clients, if you just do the right thing and have everybody's best interests at heart all the time, then if you have those three things, you'll be pretty good. So if you have the baseline knowledge, if you have experience, and you can communicate effectively with people, and you give a shit, that pretty much sums it up.
Love that. That is a killer arsenal there for amazing coaching. Nick, what would you say really makes a great coach?
Well, first and foremost, I think you have to have a love for the sport. You have to have a love for what you do, and you have to have a love for the body and science. And you have to really, and I mean passionately, be, because if this is what you want to do, you have to be in love with it. And
Nick,
you can tell by all three of us talking about that, we will get so jazzed up about the smallest, nerdiest shit. So you have to have a love for it. Second piece would be, if you are a newer coach, don't go taking on 1,000 people. You're gonna fail. When you first start out, start out with just a few guys or a few, couple guys, couple girls, and you can always grow from there, but you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Once you first start out, I'm just saying this because I know right now in 2020, there's 10 million terrible Instagram coaches out there who will take anyone and everyone's money. They will never apply to them and they'll give them just cookie cutter bullshit. So if you're a new coach, that's great, but start small and really learn your clients each individually, because each one of those people that you train, each one of those people you'll learn from them. And you go, oh, I won't do that next time. You'll figure something out from each person you work with that you can build your base of knowledge from, even if you went to school with it. I personally have only worked with guys who went to school for this. That's just me. I'm not saying that that's a necessity or requirement, a prerequisite. I know a lot of great coaches. Amin Alai comes to mind, the guru of bodybuilding who didn't, he just had the smarts. So there's been plenty of people out there who didn't go to college who can make it work, but you have to have a love for it, and you have to love what you do, and you can't be, not replying to people or giving them bullshit advice, or, taking on 10,000 people and giving them all the same crap and then not replying to anybody, because you're going to get, you might work for a little bit, ain't going to work forever.
Yep. I see a lot of similarities between you and Matt there, having a love for it. Matt's kind of saying it in a different way, like 10 years in the game. You can't really hate something for doing it for 10 years. You definitely have to be, in love with something to do it for that long, and giving a shit. Those are super good.
I think he made me think of something when you say I hate how a lot of coaches, they may have went to school for nutrition or whatever, but they don't know bodybuilding. Like, they don't know the sport. And that drives me nuts. Like, you should have a love for body. Like, they can sit there and tell people what to eat, but they're not actually analyzing like the person's body and helping them become a better competitor, because they just don't know. They don't know anything about posing. They don't, like, I would consider myself an expert in all aspects that has anything to do with competing. And a lot of the newer coaches, they aren't. They just know what they read in a textbook about nutrition, and then they're applying that, but they have no idea about anything about the sport itself.
100%. So that'd be kind of like practicing what you preach, kind of.
Yeah. And if they're coaching, if they're mostly just coaching soccer moms, that's whatever, that's fine. But if you're coaching competitors, you kind of need to know how it works.
100%. Yeah, I think practicing what you're preaching is gigantic. I'd say some of the things I'd like to touch on. Some things I would add is, working under, I would say, a coach. I think that kind of is natural with what we just said there, is practicing what you preach. There's very few people who kind of do this just by themselves. I know, Matt, you've done some stuff by yourself. I think that's kind of a rarity. But if you have even done that, that's kind of the same thing. You're working off of like a mentor, learning knowledge, but like definitely having some sort of, I believe, working under some top level coaches, not only just for knowledge, but like even understanding how to coach people, what an effective methodology is, to like, you're not just dealing with one person, you're now dealing with multiple people. So how do you actually manage that to be effective?
Well, yeah, John Meadows taught me how to, when I worked under him, taught me how to, I guess, like, make it a business. So, you've got different forms that you send new clients, a welcome package, and just how, like, the presentation and how to keep things organized and it looks nice, just to have it be an actual business versus just like shooting emails back and forth type thing. There's that side of it. There's that side of it too.
Yeah, and I think they're like kind of what Nick's saying too is, some people get bogged down. It's easy to coach yourself, but what about when you have 20 people? Are you going to start letting people slip and letting people down? You hear coaches who basically cherry pick and I know I see that all the time, is somebody's getting way more attention. I've been on the other side of that, is where somebody's getting more attention, where you're just getting an email reply with one little word, where, you know, some other person might be getting phone calls and getting all the attention. So I think I would argue that a big part of being a great coach is being able to give people equal attention, and making, you know, even somebody who might have terrible genetics, you know, might be struggling a little bit more, to where you can actually give them that same sort of, you know, what they're paying for, and that experience, to where, you know, like, since I have been on the other side of that, it's like, you could potentially have somebody quit, you know, if they felt that they were neglected. And we hear this all the time. You know, it might be show date and their coach, you can't get a hold of them. You know, why? Because they have 20 clients that they think are, you know, more qualified than you, and they're just going to be wrapped up in that. So can you handle the load? Do you give a crap about your clients? Like, just like Matt's saying, you know, do you give a crap about people equally? I think those are big things when it comes to being a good coach, because sure, you can care about your all-star player. Anybody can do that, but can you care about the person that might be the next all-star that you just, you know, screwed over, and they're going to quit this because they think the coaching industry, you know, sucks? Would you guys kind of agree with that at all?
I think that's probably one of the most common stories you'll ever hear in our business, is guys who showed up on show day and couldn't get a hold of their coach. I've heard that story so many times.
That's crazy.
It's mind-blowing.
Oh, wow. You guys have heard this before too?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's bad, because I've heard it too.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it is. I have people that surprise me all the time. I'll have new people that sign up that I'm like, man, this person probably isn't going to make it, or they're not really going to, they'll probably be around a couple months. Mm-hmm. And then a year goes by and they've totally transformed. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, that's amazing. Like, I'll usually tell them too. I mean, I don't really help that many bikini girls, because that's, I'm not going to say I don't enjoy it, but that's just not I don't really get inquiries from a lot of them. But I got one, she's never competed. And I kind of thought that. I was like, oh God, like this. So I kind of didn't respond to her a couple times, but she was pretty persistent. And we're like 4 months in, and she's like shocking the shit out of me. So you can't, yeah, you got to just go off of what you were saying. You can't really show favoritism. You got to, you know, give everybody the benefit of the doubt, because people will surprise you.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Any other points you guys would like to add on how you can be, what's the definition of a great coach?
Yeah, you should be able to sit down and write out, you know, you should have key principles in like every aspect that comes down to this. So you should have principles and theories of your own when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to training, when it comes to supplements. You should be able to sit down and write out your core values and your core principles, but you should be able to think outside of those. And how are you going to apply your principles to each individual that you have? If you're to a point where you sit down and think, well, what do I think about training? Shit, I don't know. You're not ready yet.
A great point. Awesome. Yep. Nick, any other points on being an awesome coach?
Yeah, just, you know, like Matt mentioned, give everyone the benefit of the doubt, because ultimately you are going to find those people, those little diamonds in the rough, who are going to surprise you. And that is what makes it all worth it.
Yeah. So, those are the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just keep at it, and just make sure you're being totally transparent and open and there for all your clients, and don't overload yourself.
Awesome. I'd like to give it just a few more points here. One thing is just working with people is don't define your client's success, and really get to understand what that is, because us as coaches might think that the win is number one. However, somebody might not be ready for that. You know, there might be a ton of stuff going on in their life, or they're just not at that skill set or whatever. But if you define their success for them, they're going to feel it. For one, they're going to know that you're like disappointed in them. But you'd be so surprised if you actually understand your client's level of success is maybe just hitting some workouts and dieting a little bit and just getting into the flow of that. But regardless if they're not losing a single pound every single week, you can actually turn something that you would define as a terrible experience to where you understand that that's actually a win for them. And if you can actually figure that out and start to like, you know, kind of, you guys can argue this if you'd want. I'd be curious to know your points. But like, I found so many people to where I thought maybe would be failing, but when I actually got to know them, they're super happy. They're like, man, my life's been in the shitter, and I'm going through rehab right now. I just lost my job, but like, just because we're in this and I'm hitting my workouts, I know I'm not losing weight. I'm binging on the weekends, but I'm enjoying this and I'm doing the best that I can. You know, you can actually change that person's life. And I think that's why we're in this, is we're here to, you know, help people in any way that we can. So do you guys kind of get where I'm going on this, is like really understanding your client's goals and not putting, you know, your own expectation on what it means to win? Do you have any examples of that?
Oh yeah. It happens. That's like my biggest fear all the time, is someone being like unhappy, like thinking like they're unhappy with the results they're getting. And maybe the weeks go by and I'm watching, I'm like, man, I wish I was seeing more, but then they tell you that they're happy as shit. And I'm like, well, okay. And as long as you're happy and you're seeing it, you know, I would like to see a little more, but that's just me. I guess that's why we're here. That's why we're leading them, not, you know, I guess, you know, it's better to be that way. It's better for us to have a higher expectations of them, I guess, than they have of themselves. Otherwise, what would be the need? But yeah, that happens all the time, where you might think that they're going to be disappointed, but they're actually really happy.
Yeah. For example, I have an example of somebody who rarely ever hit a workout, and you know, just basically was off the grid for weeks at a time. And I'm like, this guy is super unhappy, but I was just kind of there for him. I was like, hey man, like, you know, we're checking in, like how this week goes or anything we can do. Pretty much never responds, etc. But every single check-in I touch with him, he'll throw it out, be like, dude, thank you for not giving up on me. And he's like still in the game and loving it. And like, if I would have just like, and I had times in the back of my head, like, dude, like, let's get in this. But, you know, sometimes you just have to be, you got to be at the level they're at. You know, I have clients that are going through chemotherapy, you know, like, can you expect like everything to go ship, you know, as you plan? I think meeting your clients where they are and really understanding their sitch. And of course, Matt, to your point, optimizing that, pushing them like to the level of where they're at, I think is money. If you can get that, I think you're in like a very good spot. Cool. Any other points on coaching?
No, I think that's pretty good. Everyone is always obsessed with the X's and O's, but like this other stuff that we're talking about, I feel like is almost more important.
Oh, I totally agree. I think I'm just going to say one last point. I don't know. I have a bug for this for some reason. I think being humble to ask for help, and Matt, you could probably attest for this. How many times do I reach out and ask you for help on my clients?
Oh, sometimes. You don't do it that much, but sometimes.
I mean, I reach out and, you know, I've asked for you to help me, you know, put somebody through shows, but I personally think this is a good thing. Like if I had a coach, or like Matt, like you start asking, like say Matt Jansen or somebody else in your advanced circle there, you know, like, hey, what should I do to Noah? You know, I think that's a benefit to your client. You're getting more eyes on that person. And I think I would like to just end my kind of points with that is saying like, if you're in a spot where you don't understand what to do or what play to make, sure, they're paying for you, but I think you reaching out and really getting more advice is something helpful. So not being too, I guess, I don't
prideful.
Yeah, I was going to say arrogant, but, you know, like being humble enough to say like, hey, I don't know this. I think that's a level of respect that you can give your clients, because I'll say like, I don't know stuff. Like when it came to some of, if it was part of that GDA discussion, that wasn't my wheelhouse. So that'd be something I'd be asking you guys for. So I'd say having that ability to be humble, to serve your clients to the highest level is, I'm going to seek the expert for that question. If I get a question that I don't know, I'm going to find the best person to answer that question. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, you always, if you don't know something that someone asks you, you always want to say you don't know, whether it's a client or anybody else, versus especially clients, because then you're just doing them a disservice by spewing them bullshit. So there's nothing wrong with not knowing. Like there's this, which brings, now I'm gonna get rambling, but like amongst coaches, there's this big like dick swinging contest of like who knows the most shit.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter. Okay, like it's okay to not know something. None of us know everything, and some of the stuff that we think we know doesn't even matter in the grand scheme of things. You can almost know too much, as to some extent. So that's super annoying of people that feel, I guess just know-it-alls. Know-it-alls are annoying.
Yeah,
I think that's where it comes into play with having a good relationship with other coaches who are cool people.
Yeah.
I've found so many cool people locally and guys who've been doing it for years and years and years who I'm just friends with now. And if I have a question, I can be like, hey, I don't know about this. Like, what do you think? And that personal connection, personal relationship is really cool within the community. Yeah, there's some dickheads and, you're always going to run into that anywhere. But if you take the time and you find the right people, you will improve your business tenfold.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that's actually one of the points of this show that's like kind of underlying is to build this network of mastermind in the coaches space. And I think that's super powerful, that, not having this like information hoarding necessarily, but having a mastermind on how to best serve people. And that's, again, the point of the show is to serve you guys in the best way possible, get you guys to the next level. So we'll go ahead and end it there. But let's go ahead and just end it with any last comments. Matt, Nick, do you guys have any last things to say before we wrap up here?
No, dude, super glad I got to do this, and I'd be glad to come back anytime. This was a ton of fun.
Sweet.
Cool.
Matt, anything?
No, I got my chicken and rice and yum yum sauce. I got to eat.
Dude, that yum yum sauce is like
yum yum.
It's like pure fat.
I know.
It's called yum yum sauce.
I know.
It looks amazing.
It's like delicious.
I was like, dude, that thing is serious. But yeah, I'll get you to that here. Absolutely. I got peanut butter and jellies. But Nick, if anybody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way they could reach you?
Facebook.com/Nick Balaj. You can find me on Instagram at @TheRealNickBalls with a Z.
Sweet.
And yeah, I did have a Twitch going for a while there. I don't know. Maybe if we get, it sounds like Illinois is getting shut down again, so I might get back on there. If you do see me on Twitch, it's twitch.tv/JackedBalls.
Sweet. Love all those names. Awesome. And Matt, if anybody would like to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Instagram, just my name, Matt Berzicott.
Cool. And for me, go ahead and reach out on this YouTube or at Noah DeFreitas at Facebook or Instagram. But thank you guys again so much. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Matt. This was freaking awesome. I think we drove some value here. And again, anybody ask your questions on this YouTube or ask either Matt or Nick, and we will absolutely answer these on the next session. But with that, let's go crush some food, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.
Cheers.
See ya.
There you guys.